The amber glow of the twin suns painted the dusty plains of New Liberty in shades of fire and gold. James Daniels, an old man with hands calloused by years of toil, stood defiantly before the towering Xanthisian officer. The alien loomed over him, its crystalline form refracting the sunlight into a kaleidoscope of cold, unforgiving hues. Behind James, a crowd of settlers murmured uneasily, their voices a faint ripple against the oppressive silence. "This land belongs to the people who bled for it," James said, his voice steady despite the tight coil of fear in his chest. "Not to some empire that thinks it can snuff out our lives like we're insects." The Xanthisian officer tilted its head, an approximation of human curiosity. Its voice, distorted and mechanical, emerged from the translation device strapped to its neck. "Defiance is futile. Compliance ensures survival." James squared his shoulders. "If survival means living on our knees, I'll take death standing." The alien's crystalline arm shimmered, and with a sound like shattering glass, an energy blade materialized. The crowd gasped as James raised his chin, meeting his fate with unyielding dignity. The blade fell, and the old man crumpled to the ground lifeless. Miles away, General Jack Ironclad Daniels slammed his fist onto the metal console of his starship. The hollow feed, transmitted by a hidden camera in the settlement, flickered before cutting to static. Jack's eyes, sharp and unrelenting, burned with a fury that seemed to vibrate in the very air around him. "Patch me through to command," he growled. Captain Marcus Steele, standing at his side, hesitated. "Jack, you know what this means. If we retaliate, we're declaring open war on the Empire." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Jack interrupted, his voice like the edge of a blade. "They think they can murder my father and walk away. They'll learn what it means to cross humanity." Steele nodded grimly and relayed the order. Jack turned away, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Memories of his father flashed through his mind. James teaching him to fish on the muddy banks of the Arkansas River, laughing as they patched up the family's ramshackle spacecraft, giving Jack his first lesson on standing up to bullies. "You never back down," James had said. "Not when you know you're in the right." The doors hissed open, and Sergeant Lear, Tech Walker, strolled in, his grease-streaked hands fiddling with a jury-rigged device. "Heard the news," Walker said, his voice tinged with the southern drawl he never quite lost. "Guessing we're about to do something stupid, heroic, or both?" "Both," Jack said. "You in?" Walker grinned. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Behind him, Lieutenant Ben Cross entered silently, his face a mask of calm. He carried his sniper rifle like an extension of his body, every movement deliberate and precise. "We'll need intel," Cross said, his voice low and measured. "We'll get it," Jack replied, "and then we'll make them pay." The team gathered in the war room, the holotable displaying a detailed map of the Xanthisian-controlled outpost on New Liberty. Steele pointed to a cluster of buildings, surrounded by an energy barrier. "That's their command hub," Steele said. "If we can infiltrate it, we might find intel on their operations and weaknesses." "And blow it to hell while we're at it," Walker added, earning a smirk from Cross. The plan was simple, as all desperate plans tended to be. They would slip past the Xanthisian patrols under the cover of night, disable the energy barrier, and extract whatever data they could from the command hub. It was a suicide mission, but none of them hesitated. As the stars wheeled above the barren plains, the team moved like shadows. Jack led the way, his rifle cradled in his arms, every step a calculated risk. They reached the perimeter of the outpost, where towering Xanthisian sentries stood watch. "Walker, you're up," Jack whispered. Walker crouched beside a console, his nimble fingers working quickly to disable the outpost's sensors. Sparks flew, and the console emitted a faint hum before going dark. "Sensors are blind," Walker said. "Let's move." The team slipped through the perimeter, their movements synchronized and silent. They reached the command hub, where Steele placed a charge on the energy barrier's generator. The explosion was muffled but effective, and the barrier flickered out of existence. Inside, the Xanthisians reacted with alarming speed. Alarms blared, and crystalline warriors poured into the corridors. Cross took position at a corner, his rifle spitting death with every precise shot. Steele and Walker covered the flanks, their weapons roaring as they fought off the advancing aliens. Jack and Cross breached the command center, where a Xanthisian officer attempted to destroy the databanks. Jack shot it down without hesitation, and Walker hacked into the system. "I've got something," Walker said, his eyes scanning the streams of alien data. "Coordinates for their fleet movements, supply chains, and wait, they're planning something big. Details later," Jack snapped. "We need to exfil." The team fought their way back through the labyrinthine corridors, the Xanthisians relentless in their pursuit. They reached the extraction point, where Steele triggered their ship's remote piloting system. The vessel swooped in, its cannons blasting the remaining Xanthisians as the team boarded. As the ship ascended into the atmosphere, Jack stared out the viewport, his expression hard as stone. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "You never back down." He turned to his team, his voice firm. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." The team nodded, their resolve as unyielding as their leaders. They had drawn first blood, but the war was just beginning. The Resistance's hidden base on New Liberty was a hive of controlled chaos. Humans of all stripes, miners, engineers, farmers, and soldiers, moved with purpose, their faces etched with determination. At the center of it all stood General Jack Daniels, his presence a magnet for resolve and defiance. "Walker, give me the rundown," Jack said, arms crossed as he loomed over the makeshift holotable in the command room. "Leroy, Tech." Walker adjusted his visor, the lens projecting streams of alien data. "The intel we pulled from that outpost was gold," he began. "Turns out the Xanthisians are deploying an orbital fleet to cut off supply lines to every human colony. They're banking on starvation and isolation to break us before we even get the chance to fight." Captain Marcus Steele leaned against the table, his brow furrowed. "Classic Xanthisian efficiency, minimal bloodshed, maximum control. But it gives us an opening. If we hit their supply hubs hard enough, we can disrupt the fleet's operations." "It's not just supply hubs," Walker interjected, his fingers flying across the console. "I've been decrypting their tactical logs, and they've got a vulnerability. An over-reliance on their command AI. They've networked their entire fleet through a centralized node." Jack's eyes narrowed. "So, if we take out the node, we cripple their operations?" Walker nodded. "That's the theory. But the node is on board their flagship, Eclipticon Prime. It's a fortress in space, bristling with defenses." The room fell silent as the weight of the challenge settled over them. "Finally," Jack spoke, his voice steady. "We've faced worse odds. We'll adapt, like we always do." His confidence was contagious. Lieutenant Ben Cross, silent until now, leaned forward. "We'll need more than luck and guts. We'll need ingenuity and a hell of a lot of firepower." "Then we build it," Jack said. "We use what we have, scavenge what we don't, and make what they never saw coming." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Walker, with his knack for turning scrap into miracles, led the charge. The team repurposed mining equipment, abandoned colony tech, and alien materials scavenged from prior skirmishes. Under his guidance, they built EMP grenades capable of frying Xanthisian tech, drones outfitted with cloaking devices, and railguns powered by Xanthisian crystal cores. Steele coordinated the growing resistance, training volunteers in guerrilla tactics and unconventional warfare. He emphasized adaptability, drilling the recruits in scenarios that exploited the rigid predictability of the Xanthisians. Meanwhile, Cross worked tirelessly with the snipers, honing their skills to lethal precision. The Xanthisians, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with technological superiority, began to feel the sting of humanity's creativity. Hit-and-run raids on supply depots left alien patrols reeling. Small teams sabotaged energy relays and communication nodes, sowing confusion among the Empire's forces. During one such mission, Jack and his core team infiltrated a Xanthisian relay station hidden in a canyon. The plan was simple: disable the station's transmitter and plant a virus in its network to feed false information to the Empire. The operation began under cover of darkness. Cross led the advance, his sniper rifle eliminating sentries with unnerving precision. Steele followed with a small squad, their movements ghost-like as they secured the perimeter. Jack and Walker worked on breaching the facility's main doors, their improvised EMPs shorting the locks with a hiss and a pop. Inside, the station was a maze of glowing conduits and alien machinery. Walker plugged a portable drive into a terminal, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Uploading the virus now," he whispered. "Give me 90 seconds. Make it 60, Jack said, his eyes scanning the corridors. Alarms blared, and Xanthian soldiers began pouring into the facility. Steele's voice crackled over the comms. "Contact at the north entrance. We're holding them off, but we're outnumbered." "Walker, how much longer?" Jack barked. "Almost there." Walker snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. The team held their ground as wave after wave of Xanthians attacked. Cross's rifle barked repeatedly, each shot finding its mark. Steele and his squad fought with brutal efficiency, their tactics unpredictable and fluid. Jack moved like a force of nature, his rifle cutting down enemies with unrelenting precision. "Done," Walker shouted, yanking the drive from the terminal. "Let's move." The team fought their way out, the facility collapsing into chaos behind them as the virus spread through its systems. By the time they reached their extraction point, the station was broadcasting false data across the Xanthian network. Back at the base, the mood was electric. The success of the mission had emboldened the resistance, proving that the Empire was not invincible. Yet Jack remained focused. "This is just the beginning," he told his team, his voice low but firm. "The Xanthians will adapt, but so will we. We've shown them we're not just survivors, we're fighters. Now we need to show them we can win." Walker grinned, holding up a prototype of a modified mining laser. "With this bad boy, I'd say we're off to a good start." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Good, because our next target is the Eclipticon Prime. It's time to take this fight to their doorstep." The room fell silent, the gravity of the statement sinking in. Yet in the silence, there was no fear, only resolve. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to turn back now. Jack looked around at his team, his voice firm and unyielding. "We've got one shot at this. Let's make it count." The Eclipticon Prime hung in the void like a monolith, its crystalline structure glinting with cold brilliance. Its massive bulk was surrounded by a web of smaller Xanthian warships, each patrolling in tight, predictable orbits. From their stealthy vantage aboard a cloaked resistance frigate, Jack Daniels and his team studied their prey with a mix of awe and determination. "This is it," Jack said, his voice calm but charged with the weight of the moment. "Their flagship, their lifeline. We take it out, and the rest of their fleet collapses like a house of cards." Leroy Techwalker, seated at the frigate's engineering console, nodded without looking up. "Our cloaking should hold long enough to get us close. After that, it's all on you guys to punch through and buy me time to upload the virus." Captain Marcus Steele checked his weapon, his movements deliberate, and the odds of us actually getting out of there alive. Jack smirked faintly. "Let's not worry about that right now." "Comforting," Steele muttered, earning a dry chuckle from Lieutenant Ben Cross, who was busy calibrating his sniper rifle. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. Their frigate would slip past the patrols, docking covertly with the flagship. Jack and his team would infiltrate the core, where the command AI resided, and Walker would deploy the virus to disable the entire fleet's network. As the frigate approached the Eclipticon Prime, tension thickened the air. The ship trembled as Walker adjusted the cloaking field to mask their presence from the flagship's sensors. Through the viewport, the alien behemoth grew larger, its surface a dizzying array of crystalline spires and pulsating conduits. "Docking clamps engaged," Walker announced, his voice tight with concentration. "We're in." The team suited up quickly, each man focused and silent as they checked their gear. Jack led the way into the airlock, his face a mask of determination. When the outer hatch opened, they stepped into the enemy's stronghold. The interior of the Eclipticon Prime was alien and unwelcoming, its walls shimmering with an organic luminescence. Xanthian drones floated through the corridors, their crystalline forms emitting a faint hum. The team moved swiftly and silently, their training and experience guiding every step. They reached the first checkpoint, where a pair of Xanthisian sentries stood guard. Cross moved into position, his sniper rifle whispering twice. The sentries crumpled soundlessly, and the team pressed on. "Core chamber is 2 levels down," Walker whispered, consulting a holographic map. "We'll need to bypass at least 3 more patrols to get there." As they descended deeper into the flagship, the resistance team encountered heavier opposition. Steele led the charge in the firefights, his leadership and quick thinking keeping their movements fluid and unpredictable. Cross's marksmanship proved invaluable, every shot neutralizing a critical threat before it could escalate. They reached the core chamber, its entrance guarded by a Xanthisian elite squad. These crystalline warriors were larger and more heavily armored than the others, their energy weapons crackling ominously. "Cross, pick off the stragglers," Jack ordered. "Steele, Walker with me." We hit them hard and fast. The battle was brutal. The Xanthisian elites were relentless, their weapons scorching the walls as they fired in coordinated volleys. Jack's team fought with desperate ferocity, using every ounce of their skill and ingenuity. Walker hurled an EMP grenade, its pulse frying the aliens' weapons long enough for Steele to deliver a decisive blow with a makeshift energy lance. When the last elite fell, the team pushed into the core chamber. At its center stood the AI node, a towering crystalline construct that pulsed with an eerie light. Walker rushed to the terminal, his hands a blur as he worked to upload the virus. "Cover me," Walker shouted, his voice tight with urgency. The Xanthisians weren't about to let their prized node fall. Alarms blared, and reinforcements poured into the chamber. Jack and Steele formed a defensive line, their rifles spitting fire as they held off the advancing aliens. Cross, perched on an elevated platform, provided cover, his shots dropping enemies with mechanical precision. "Virus is uploading," Walker yelled, sweat streaming down his face. 60%, 70. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber as a Xanthisian heavy drone burst through the wall. It unleashed a torrent of energy blasts, forcing the team to scatter. Steele took a hit to the shoulder, but gritted his teeth and kept firing. 90%. Walker shouted, frantically typing. "Just a little more." Jack charged the drone, using its bulk as cover as he fired into its exposed circuits. The machine shuddered and collapsed, sparking violently. "Upload complete," Walker screamed. "We're good to go." "Fall back," Jack roared. The team retreated under heavy fire, fighting their way back to the docking point. The virus was already taking effect. Xanthisian drones faltered mid-flight, their movements erratic, while the walls of the ship flickered as the network destabilized. As they reached the frigate, the Eclipticon Prime shuddered violently. Explosions rippled across its surface as its systems collapsed, chain reacting through the fleet. The team barely made it on board before the flagship began to break apart. From the safety of their vessel, they watched as the Eclipticon Prime was consumed by fire, its destruction sending shockwaves through the surrounding Xanthisian ships. Walker slumped in his seat, his face pale but triumphant. That was too close. Jack stood at the viewport, watching the remnants of the Xanthisian fleet scatter. His expression was grim but resolute. "We're not done yet. This was a victory, but the war's not over." Steele, nursing his injured shoulder, smirked. "One battle at a time, General." Jack nodded, his gaze unwavering. "One battle at a time." As the frigate slipped into the stars, the Resistance knew they had dealt the Xanthisian Empire a crippling blow. Humanity had proven its resilience and ingenuity once again, and though the road ahead remained perilous, they would face it together.